Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, 7 p.m. Central, 7:06 down here in Florida. It's hot. I hate it. Bugs, ants, fleas, mosquitoes, everything that lives is coming out to eat humans. I can't even put my feet in the grass anymore. Like there's those weird barbs that you can't even like put your feet in the grass to like get some earth energy. Like those things that, I mean, they're ruthless, like horrible. It's like, who put those there just so we wouldn't walk on the earth? I don't, but they're terrible. Anytime I do it now, they were gone, but I guess they just came back. So I got attacked by barbs in my feet. And I wanted to plug three books from Tor really quick. Was it Nightfire? They're by John. Let me make sure I'm saying this guy's name right. John Scalzi, Scalz, the Kaiju Preservation Society, and I don't even know if I'm saying that one right. Kaiju. It's like Godzilla's and stuff. Am I pronouncing that right, Wham or Stephanie?
Kaiju.
Okay, that seems pretty good though. It's about that kind of stuff. And then he has a second book that just came out that I'm really interested about. And that's John Scalzi, Scalzi, but Starter Villain. And it says at the top, inheriting your uncle's supervillain business is more complicated than you might think. So it's kind of like a weird, I guess, Despicable Me, evil genius. Some guy inherits his family members' evil, Dr. Evil Empire or whatever, an underground base. The last book, Cassandra Call, The Salt Grows Heavy. And it says Call is a master of teasing your senses and then terrorizing them. And that has a plague doctor on it, which is kind of cool. So Salt Grows Heavy, horror from Tor. So you can get those at Amazon or go to the TOR site and check it out. All right. We got Stephanie Quick here with us tonight. We got Wham with us. We got Theresa Meis with us. And we're going to get wild on Roku. That's right.
Wild on Roku.
That's right. Gonna get really wild on Roku.
It's cold.
What?
It's cold. It's cold where I'm at. We had a frost warning 2 nights ago.
Oh, that's nuts.
Well, it's New York. It's upper New York. So
there's one more thing. If you get a chance, go to Tubi, Tubi. They got free stuff there. Pretty good selection of movies, but there's commercials, which I hate. But that movie, The Dark Divide, is there. And it's an independent film with comedian David Cross in it based on a true story that is, I watched it and didn't realize it was about Bigfoot. It's a true story about a dude that's like into insects and butterflies and like a specialist or whatever. I don't know what it's called. But his wife is sick and she has cancer and it's really bad. And he ends up going to the wilderness for 30 days because of a grant. And he has some Bigfoot encounters. And there's actually a book. And this guy was really like an insect specialist and had these encounters. And now he talks about Bigfoot. I'll have to see if he's still kicking and wants to do the show. But David Cross was in it. You know, the guy from Mr. Show with Bob Odenkirk and all that.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's like an independent movie. But it's on Tubi. You can watch it. And so they have it on DVD. It's kind of hard to find on DVD, I think. But Tubi has it right now. So, but the Weirdo collect. Go ahead. Ma'am.
Well, I was just going to say that I just got word from David Perkins, who I think Stephanie knows.
Yeah.
That this really, really good documentary about Lyme disease called The Quiet Epidemic has come out. And the reason why some of our viewers might be interested in it, despite the fact that, you know, I think everyone should know more about Lyme disease for a variety of reasons, is that this particular documentary was what it does is it traces the very weird and rather suspicious collaboration between the CDC and certain individuals that are epidemiologists and a big pharma when it comes to trying to come up with treatments and vaccines, and it's all well documented. Was privileged to see an early screening of it. It doesn't go into some of the more interesting conspiratorial things that I'm aware of, but what's in it is enough to cause significant concern for a lot of people, because it isn't just Lyme. It's a number of other tick-borne diseases that often co-infect with Lyme. I mean, Stephanie knows all about this. She's had Lyme disease. I've had Lyme disease. And a lot of people that we know have had it, and it explains why it's become, at least from an environmental perspective, why it's become an epidemic. So it's called. You can see it. Let's see here. Just a minute. Let me look real quickly. I know you can see it on Amazon Prime. Okay. And let me look at the two other places. You can get it on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, or Vimeo on demand. It's and on Amazon Prime, it's available either streaming or you can purchase a DVD. And the maker of this film, the maker of this documentary, is right now working on procuring funding to do another documentary from a different perspective on cattle mutilations. Oh, when they can get the money together. So.
Yeah, because David Perkins has done like a huge amount of work on cattle mutilations, right. And from a very interesting perspective, looking at like ecology and myth and, monitoring by the governments, big changes that we have created on the landscape here in the United States. And right. He's very smart. He's an interesting person, and he's nice to talk to. He's not dogmatic, and he's open-minded. You can have actual discussion with him, which I really appreciate.
Right. When he was the one that hooked me, when he found out that I had Lyme, he's the one that hooked me up to see this, to get a pre.
Oh, that's great.
So I highly recommend it. I mean, I've purchased it. I've both on streaming and DVD, and I mean. I'm on a crusade about this because Lyme changed my life. It completely altered my entire physiology.
Oh, it almost killed me. It almost killed me.
I mean, literally. You always talk about, is it from the same guy from that book you were showing not too long ago?
Oh, Bitten? No, it's not. It's not. It's actually from a different perspective, but it shows. It demonstrates that you don't need to go into deep clandestine places to find abhorrent collaboration between people who have power. And what's interesting about this is it talks about this towards the end of the epidemic, that really one of the fascinating things about COVID is one of the things that COVID demonstrated is that, if there's enough of a public emergency, you can get the powers that be to move their asses to do something. But they haven't been doing anything on Lyme for 40 years, and 500,000 people are diagnosed with it a year. And those are just the people that we know of. Yeah. And a full 20% of those people, that's 20%, that's 1 out of every 5 of those people have developed long-term symptoms from this. So it's not insignificant. So anyway, I'm off my preacher thing.
No problem. We understand. And watching that would make me itch a lot. I'm already freaked out from watching Missing 411 UFO Connection, so I don't need to go to the woods anyway. But I have woods all around me. But one thing about that Missing UFO Connection, I know I said this before, and then we're going to talk about the Weirdo Collective. What haunted me the most about that, and I know not every person's being taken by aliens, but there's some weird cases in there of this old guy who they took, and he was in the papers, and he did 4 lie detector tests, and he said they put him back because he had a vasectomy.
Yeah.
That creeped me out, because when I had my encounters and things parked over my homes with friends saying, Jeffrey, you're attracting them here, and saw some different beings, from light beings to little weird hooded beings to some other weird stuff that still trying to get over psychologically. There was a triangle craft over some power lines, and I was with a friend, and a ball of light came out of it towards us. And I asked him years later about that, and he don't remember it for anything, and I remember it plain as day. But when I heard about that vasectomy thing, knowing I'm a testicular cancer survivor and had it at 17, it makes you wonder, did they throw, was I a fish they threw back? But the weird thing about those cases, all the other ones of people that never came back, they had German, like Germanic heritage, and all their plumbing was full throttle. So that's just a weird thing that was creepy for sure about that. And missing 411 UFO connection. But I've interviewed David like 5 or 6 times. Sometimes he's a real prick, but I haven't interviewed him in a while. But anyway, I like those, but I don't think everybody's being taken by UFOs. But Theresa, hello. Hello. It's good to have you here as a guest.
Nice to meet you, Jeffrey.
What was the catalyst for the Weirdo Collective? Did something happen to you? What started it?
I like research. I like to be able to find information when I'm looking for it. And for a long time, I've been talking to one of my friends, Jay, shout out Jay, about how it would be really handy if we could create a database of all the content that these small independent creators are making, because that is incredible. Like, it's an incredible resource of different thought, like not the mainstream thought, but these are like, individual people sharing their unique perspective and telling their own stories, and being able to have this all cataloged in one place would make it really nice for if you're like, hey, I want to look up Mothman or Flatwoods or whatever, just whatever random stuff you want to look up. And so it occurred to me that one way to create a database would be to use news aggregation tools that are available for website building. And so the Weirdo Collective was really born out of a way to promote independent creators and have a database of their creations that's searchable. And the website, this is a passion project. It is a no ads, not going to ever have ads on it sort of situation, which is also because of my life and because I have been an independent business owner most of my adult life, up until recently. I know that there will be ebbs and flows to my availability. And so I don't feel beholden if I have to like back off and like slow down on who can join when and that sort of thing. So, but the main focus is to have a resource available to the public where all these creators are getting their information out in a place that's searchable.
How long has it been going? How many years?
It's been going since like January, I think.
It's very new. And
yeah,
Jay,
it's very new.
Yeah, her friend Jay is Jason Shank that we spoke with a while back.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
cool.
Yeah, so you're just starting this up.
Yep. And as part of the whole availability of being able to go in and out of deep work in the weird, I am on the edge of be able to back into it deeper. So I'm going to be promoting the Weirdo Collective a little bit more, probably opening it up for new members shortly here. But yeah, that's where it came from, was just wanting to make sure that these creators had promotion and that there was a way to keep their collective knowledge in one central location.
Cool. I saw there was one Saint Dracula. I always love a good Vlad the Impaler show. They're rare to come by. had a Victor Foya, who has an eye patch because something happened to his eye, but from Born in Transylvania, we've had him on a Halloween show. That was something. That was for sure. But I'm familiar with the Arthur too from Inner Traditions. I work with them a lot. The Secret History of Vampires. But basically, people can come in with different podcasts and share their archives and stuff.
Exactly. Yep.
Ooh. And let's see. What are some of the ones that you can tell us about? What maybe a few of them that are on there?
Well, we've got some podcasts that regularly put out incredible content, like Our Strange Skies, Mysteries and Monsters. Both of those are some of my favorite listens. And the reason I will say that those two creators, Paul Bestel and Rob Christofferson, And I just have to tell you that under pressure, me being able to remember people's names is amazing. So I just need to note that.
I understand. I understand.
But the way that they interview people is incredibly empathetic. They're very much into the story. They're not into the truth. They want to hear people's stories, how it impacted them, how it changed their lives. And that empathy is a real reason why I appreciate the work that the two of them do, because I feel like they're really getting more information out of people by, by conducting their interviews in that style. And then we have some creators like AP Strange, who posts as the spirit moves him, so to speak. And his work is incredible. And, for people, like, it's hard to be a creator that sticks to a schedule if what you're getting is inspired by what the phenomenon drops in your lap, because the phenomenon doesn't care about a schedule. So I want to make sure creators who aren't constant posters, who aren't doing something every week on a schedule, also get to be part of this collective as well.
It's a good idea.
Well, I should just send you my website then, because all my crap goes up there.
No,
I would love to have that. I will add you in on the next round, which will probably open up very shortly here.
Okay, yeah, because I've got, I do irregular YouTube postings once or twice a month at most, because I work,
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. I work and I have a family, and so that's why I wanted to make sure this was a low-key sort of endeavor.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I can just give you my website,
and then there's a crazy lady named Stephanie Quick who also posts on my site.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, Theresa, because so the reason why I wanted to have Theresa on and talk to her about stuff is we've been having conversations like on Twitter and on the phone and stuff. But looking at, if someone comes on, let's say like weird Twitter or weird Facebook or whatever, you see a lot of, let's say you're interested in, like, let's say the occult or ritual, you see like a lot of kind of highly curated stuff, a lot of people that have incredible book knowledge and have like time and space to be doing these kind of very structured practices and in groups and stuff like this, publishing books and everything, which is fine and great. But like Wham, right? You work, right?
Yeah.
Theresa, works, and you have young children. I don't work, but I have big health problems, including aphasia, which has come up recently. So if my voice bugs out at some point, that's what's going on from lupus. But I help take care of my mom, who's getting elderly and has some like weird health problems that have to be kind of like monitored, like her blood pressure and stuff. So it's like these very you don't have a lot of time, you're not in a position where you can like run off one day a week to go out in the woods with the tree worshipers or something, which is great if you could do
not
it.
independently wealthy or free.
Thank you. So Theresa was on Tracing Owl's podcast talking about her dream practice, and she has a very intense dream practices where you're actually like, working with and having premonitions with and kind of dreaming with like people that are close to you and stuff. And kind of like, instead of being a type of person who would say, oh, come over, have a cup of tea. Okay, we'll, do our crystals and whatever thing, and you'll be feeling it. You're like, okay, this is the only time I have. And you're tuning in on the dream plane and you're working it out there. But Theresa, you were talking about it, and Wham, I thought you'd be a good person to ask about this because you have wide experience in weird matters. But this whole idea of practice when your life is busy and crazy and you have a lot of people who depend on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can you shoehorn it in there?
Well, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. Wham, I will give the mic to you in 2 seconds, but I was just going to say about the dream practice. One of the things that I learned about, or one of the ways that I expanded my dream practice, is because of my small children. Waking up constantly throughout the night really trains your body and your mind to do that lucid dream state and that, half of the hypnopompic state where you're waking up but not entirely awake. And that's a great place to start your lucid work. And so it was because of my chaotic brain cycle overnight for years with my small babies that I was able to develop that. And I'll pass it back to you, Wham.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, I've never been in a situation in my life for any length of time where I have not had to work. And that's just been the nature of my life. And so I learned really, really early from several sources. One was frankly at one point in my life, early in this process, was AA. Although I no longer go to AA because I don't have to anymore. But there are some really, really good sort of general check-in processes that the 12-step programs have for helping you to sort of stop that crazy mind. You know what I mean? To just stop it. Because that's sort of what you have to do in order to stop certain types of mental habits. And then I also learned certain forms of meditation in the Buddhist community that I hung out in when I was in my early 20s. And as Stephanie knows, I also deeply imbibed in the literature of the Seth material, which, if you actually read it carefully, has a lot of really practical ways of beginning to work with your dream states, with breathing, with and it's geared towards people who have an everyday life. It's not geared to, I mean, it's true that Jane Roberts and Robert Butts, the two people who produced this material, when by the end of their lives they had a little bit more leisure, but when they first got started they were both working, and in fact Rob was commuting part of his week into New York City from Elmira, of all places.
Yeah.
2 or 3 times a week. So, and this is like back in the 60s when it was a lot harder to do that than it is now. So it's, these were people who lived regular lives. And I think the thing that I learned about it is that these states of mind, meditation, mindfulness, different states of awareness, these things are actually normal. They are normal states that we forget because of our lives. We forget that these are our inheritance. These are simply part of who we are. And so it's a matter of just being able to remind yourself of this. And there are simple little tricks. Like, for example, one of the things the Seth material taught me to do is, and actually Buddhism is good this way too, is when you're in your house and say you're tired, you come in, you're tired, you're from work, you're tired and you sit down, and there's this, when you come in, there's this moment where you just kind of go, huh, you just sit there and the day is going through your head and you're like, oh God, because the first thing I always think of is like all the things I have to do before I go to bed. Because the job that I have right now, it's an hour commute one way, which I hate. I'm trying to change that. It's an hour commute one way. So it's like 2 hours a day I'm wasting time in the car. When you're 20, that doesn't matter so much. But when you're 62, it matters a lot because you're wasting your life, basically. But anyway, and then as soon as I get home, since I have to get up so early, I have to get up at 5 a.m. to be into work at time. By the time I go to bed, I get home, I have to start getting ready for the next day almost immediately. And if you have kids, little kids, they're going to take all of your attention as soon as you get home. It's like, and I don't even know how people do it personally because, I just don't know, because I'm afraid I would have flung all my kids into space if I'd had them.
The space babies.
I'm sure I would have wanted to, but I don't have the mental space for it. But anyway, when you come in and you just kind of go like this, if you can remember just for a minute, give yourself in that moment just a minute or two, if you can, or the next time that you can, you know, the next time, if you have to wait until you go to the bathroom, that's fine too. You know, just give yourself a moment and just remind yourself that everything here is a dream. If this was a dream, this is what I always, if this was a dream that I'm sitting in, which it is, if this is a dream, what would it mean? What would the significance of this be, and this be, and this be, if this was a dream? And then you remind yourself that it is. You know, you can do these little, I always do stuff in the shower. That's where I do stuff. When I'm taking a shower in the morning, that's where I do. I mean, I have a meditation practice that I do every single day. And you know, I've had to change it as my schedule has changed. You know, you just rearrange it. I mean, the book that I wrote, Mysterious Beauty, I wrote it while I was working 2 jobs. You know, it's like you find places. I was fortunate in that I had a job where I could actually write parts of it while I was at work, because I would have to wait for like jobs to finish and stuff. But you just find ways of doing it, you know, and you don't, the worst thing you can do for yourself is tell yourself, you know, when I'm done with this, I'm done with this, because you'll never be done with it ever. Right. You got to start where you are and just begin and begin small. You know, when I started writing that book, Mysterious Beauty, I would try to write just 1 paragraph a day. If I could even write like 1 little bit of it a day, or do one, or even 1 little piece of work on it a day. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, it just, and if you do that, because that's the way the Seth material worked too. It's like they would do these sessions, and sometimes they'd be able to have like really long sessions, like twice a week. But they only had, at most, when they put those sessions together, on average, they only did like 1 session a week. And they did those sessions at the end of their day. Mm-hmm. After they had already done all of this other creative work. And maybe the session lasted for 1.5 hours. Sometimes it only lasted for 20 minutes, you know, but sometimes they would have to stop because something would intervene, something would happen. You know, once there was a big flood because a Hurricane Agnes came through, you know, mm-hmm. The you know, over the holidays, they would take a break, you know, stuff like that. And they would still turn out mm-hmm. 3 times a year. You know, you just have to just do what you can do as you do it.
Poor Stephanie has heard me talk about this before, so sorry to make you listen to another one of my rants, but this reminds me so much. I was really interested in trying out the material from the Monroe Institute, and
right.
super excited about it. Right. And so, like, I purchased it and everything, and I was on a Discord channel. I will not say the name of it because I can't remember which Discord channel it was or which person said this to me, but I was talking to some of the folks there, and a guy on there was like, well, to do this right, you got to like go to bed and have this tea and then go to bed and then get up after an hour and then start the track and like do all this other stuff. And I was like, well, I did self-hypnosis thing for my, you know, childbirthing, which was Hypno Babies was the name of the program I used. And it was a whole guided self-hypnosis thing for labor and delivery. And I was like, my experience with that was XYZ. And basically I would start the thing, do all the exercises, and then I would blank out and then come up as soon as they got done with the track, like when they're counting up, and then I'd remember it. But when I actually got to the point of delivery, my midwife was like, this is the chillest I have ever seen a person deliver a baby in my life. And as I was delivering, I was doing all these exercises I didn't know I knew. And I was like, this is cool. And the moment I'm like, oh, I'm doing a thing that I learned that now I remember learning it, but at the time I didn't. And I would explain this to the person on Discord, and they're like, well, you're doing it wrong because you can't, you're supposed to be completely conscious while you're doing this. And I'm like, but I don't know if I will be. And then I started the Monroe Institute stuff. It was the same principles as that work I've been doing. And I'm like, why are you telling me that I was doing this wrong?
Because idiots, shut up.
And I was like, this is fitting it into my life. I can't drink tea and then go to sleep for an hour and wake up. I've got small kids. I have to sleep every damn second I can get. I'm not going to purposely wake up.
I wouldn't be able to do that either because I'd have to urinate every 15
right.
minutes.
I know. So that was my huge wake up call of, wait a minute, I am the expert at being me, and doing things the way that works for me is the right way to do it.
Exactly. Well, and see, that's why I like the Seth material too, because he gives some principles. He says, try this, try this, try this. Mm-hmm. This is what seems to work for most people. But if you've got this issue, then try this. And if you figure out a way to do it for yourself, that's fine.
Right.
It's like there's nothing dogmatic about it. It's very
exactly practical. Yeah, being able to do what works for you is so important. Another thing that we were discussing earlier today was the divide between people who insist on academic knowledge for everybody that participates in something, which they don't need that. The only people that I personally feel should be held to the standard of academic knowledge is if they are claiming to speak with academic authority. Like then you should have the knowledge. Everybody else is just experiencing life. It's like the reason why you have, and to take this to a hierarchy that Westerners typically understand, is the priests and the congregation. The priest is supposed to have academic authority because they're claiming it. The congregation is there to learn, and they're doing things their own way and experiencing whatever they are called to experience in their own way. But unless you are claiming that authority, people don't need to force that on other people. It's so exhausting when people are like, well, name all the books that you've read and then I'll talk to you. It's like, oh God.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as someone who has a piled high and deeper, I just don't, I get so tired of that. I mean, there are times, and it's usually when I'm confronting another person who is an academic or who has credentials and is trying to be an asshole with them. And then I'll say, oh, by the way, I have one too. And since I have one, I can critique you thusly, and I do, but it's like, because that may be the only reason they listen to me.
Exactly.
Because of that. But, it's only for some things that I'll pull that out.
Yeah.
It's weird. Well, this is something that's of interest to me, partly because I took anthropology in college, so it's like one of those, and it was like structural anthropology. So this is kind of one of the frames that you use to try and organize material that you're looking at. But I see it happen again and again in like the UFO sphere, where you have someone and they have a PhD in something that sounds kind of sciencey, and then they claim an experience or they come up with a theory, which is like the same old theory repackaged or something. And there's a bunch of these, sorry, Jeffrey, UFO bros that come on there and get super excited about talking to this person because it's like a sciencey man. Or like with Missing 411. I mean, a lot of people got really excited about that because David Paulides, he was like law enforcement, and he has like that big law enforcement mustache.
Well, I've known law enforcement people, so what?
Oh, he has a porno mustache.
I just want to throw out there.
I'm glad you said that.
It was accurate. It's a nice mustache, I guess.
The place where I grew up and the age I am was the same age and location as a person who was abducted as a child. It was national headline story. I'm not going to name the name, but it really traumatized everybody in my generation from the area for sure. Yeah. About as we became parents, letting our children be away from us. And the story was so much more than just somebody who disappeared mysteriously. And so I've always taken those disappearance stories with a very heavy grain of salt, because I've seen up close and firsthand, and people all over the country have seen up close and firsthand in their own towns what the impact of a missing person actually is, as opposed to a fascinating story. And so that's my experience with that.
That's true regardless of how the person disappeared.
Right.
When I first started teaching, the very first semester, the second semester that I taught, a kid who was in both of my classes, because I taught like I taught like a 2-sequence class, that it had a part 1 and a part 2 for semesters.
Mm-hmm.
The second semester, he was a senior and he was going to graduate, and he disappeared and he's never been found. And we have a pretty good idea of what probably happened to him, because there was flooding going on in the area, and there was some weather issues going on.
Mm-hmm.
But what made it really weird for me was that the night before he disappeared, I mean, literally earlier that day, he and I were having a conversation about what he was going to do for his final project, and then he disappeared, and it affected everybody in the class. It affected, and it's affected his friends and his family, and the tavern that he disappeared from ever since.
Right.
It's been 30 years.
Yeah, there's a lot of disappearances of young girls, especially in the kind of 80s and 90s in the greater San Francisco Bay Area. And a couple of them, one of them was just Amber Schwartz Garcia was solved a year or so ago, because they had kept, it was terrible. This is down on Mission in, I think, Hayward, California, which is the next town over from where I grew up. And I drove up and down Mission all the time. And I was like a camp counselor a few years before this happened to her. Behind the Hayward Plunge, they had like a park, and we'd have like a summer camp for like a week thing for these kids and stuff. Anyway, so she and her friend took their bikes and they went down to the corner store to get candy or something. And when her friend came out, Amber had been snatched by this guy in a car, and her bike was still there. And I don't believe she's ever been found. Anyway, luckily they had kept her bike, and they had finally come up with a type of fingerprint processing image technology where they were able to match up the fingerprints on this bike with a guy who was already in prison for he murdered a couple of grown women, and because she was like, I don't know, like 9 or something when she disappeared. But yeah, there was a number of these cases and some of them are still unsolved, and it's haunting and it's terrible. So yeah, I agree that I wish that people would pay a little bit more attention to, like, the human element of it, and the fact that, you have people, family, friends in the community at that going on. But I thought, Theresa, you made a lot of good points about, like Wham, like you're talking about, like a lot of us people have I have a lady I like for her style advice. She talks about for like people on the go, right? People that always have a bunch of stuff to do. How can you approach practice and finding these like little bites here and there that you can make progress and build upon that, and how it's kind of I don't know. That's one of the things I like about like the Weirdo Collective and things like podcasts or blogs or stuff like that, because it's like you can kind of tune into that aspect of yourself, even if you're just like doing dishes and listening to something, right? Or if you have like audio things like with Monroe or something that you could listen to when you have a minute to have a little nap or something. But so I thought that was interesting, and it's kind of, I'm always trying to look for places where you get resources about kind of like the little bits approach, because it seems like you can always find like a big book with a bunch of stuff in it, or some course that someone's offering that's like a lot of money and a big time commitment. And then you also have to worry about well, be aware of too that, it might not be a good fit with you personality wise, or sometimes it could be difficult to find out if someone's like completely on the up. I mean, there are scammers and stuff out there with these type of practices. And if you're trying to learn from them, that could be something to be aware of. So I don't know, these are just always my concerns. But Theresa, I like that you have found ways to kind of get into this. And it's something that's not usually, I mean, it kind of blew me away when you were just talking right now about getting into lucid dreaming because your kids are constantly waking you up and that whole thing, working on your sleep cycle. Because I thought, I've been interested in this stuff for whatever, like 40 plus years. Met a ton of people online and also in real life. And I don't think I've ever really heard anyone talk about that before. And there are literally billions of people on this planet, and they all got here through someone being pregnant and having to deal with. So I'm like, why is this?
Well, in indigenous traditional societies, they do talk about this.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is part of what people do, and dreams. And I mean, I remember I was talking about I was talking to one of my teachers about whose sister right now lives up in a fairly traditional Micmac band up on a reserve in Canada. And they're trying to, as much as they can, given kind of the situation in the world today,
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of working to revive as many traditional practices as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that includes certain kinds of dream practices and certain kinds of child rearing practices.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that has to do with dreams, with as I've heard it, you sleep when the baby sleeps.
Yeah.
You sleep with the baby sleeps, and the whole family of adults, because you have these extended families. The whole family of adults share in taking care of the kids.
Yeah.
So no one person gets too wasted.
Mm-hmm.
And so and then, like, what they do every morning apparently is when they get up in the morning, the people that are up, they tell each other the dreams they've had that night. And they have
I have heard that before.
They gather together and they talk about dreams or visions or thoughts that they've heard. And there are a lot of indigenous people who do that, who do things like that. And that's actually something that traditional Sufis used to do as well. They still do it in certain communities. So when I've gone on retreat with my imam, that's the first thing we do. We get up early in the morning before our sessions start, and we do morning prayers, and then we sit around and we tell dreams. And he's a dream interpreter. He's been trained in certain types of dream interpretation, and he's also a psychotherapist, a trained psychotherapist.
Oh wow!
So he does these. He's done dream interpretations for me, and they're really startling. But it's like, because when you're in a retreat setting like that, I don't know about if any of you have done this, but your dreams change because you're around these people and you're all kind of sharing that dream spiritual space. And but that's the way families would be too. You're all sharing that kind of mental, psychological space.
This is an incredible segue. I have been in that situation for the last 20 years. Every fall, my husband and my children now and I perform at the Renaissance Festival here, and we camp every weekend, and everybody that camps on site talks about the insane dreams that we have over there. Yeah. And it's just so amazing how very, very vivid those dreams are in that location, separate from any other dream experiences that we have. So it's it is, like you said, it is a beautiful and rich and incredible experience to be having dreams, sleeping in a campground with like 200 or 300 other people who are all there excited with a mission to perform, to entertain. And it's just amazing.
Oh yeah, well, and your dreams, you'll start having dreams for people. I've had that experience where I've had a dream, and I realized immediately upon awakening that this was not my dream, that I was dreaming something for someone, and I had to immediately call them or talk to them and tell them. And what's really weird is that I would tell them the dream. I have no idea what it means. I just have the dream. I tell them, and then I ask them, does this make any sense to you? And they're like, yeah.
Right? It's so exciting to talk to somebody else that has that experience, because I have those dreams too. One of the most profound dreams I had, and I'm leaving it very, very vague because I want to respect the person's privacy, but it turned out that I dreamed about somebody's deceased husband. I saw them walking down the hallway of their house and going into their daughter's bedroom, sitting next to the daughter's bed and putting their hand on the daughter, and then walking to the wife's bedroom and sitting down and putting their hand on the wife. And the next morning, and I was close enough to this person that I felt it was okay for me to broach this topic with them. And I said, hey, I had a dream about your past husband. Would you like me to share it with you? And she said, yeah, go ahead. And so I told her about the dream, and she wrote back and she's like, oh my God, yesterday the man that I've been dating proposed to me, and I wasn't sure if I had his blessing. And I was like, ugh. I'm letting you interpret this the way you want. I'm not putting any spin on it because I have no idea. This is not me. I just happened to be the net that catched it. Or caught it. Catched it. I don't know. Caught it. Yeah. I write for a living, if you can believe it. But
you're a dream catcher, yeah.
Yes. Anyway. Yeah. It was a really neat experience. And those I've had other dreams, like you said, where you just contact the person, you're like, I dreamed about you, it felt like I should tell you about this dream, and that's all I know about it.
And it's really startling.
Yeah. And at this point in my life, I never pretend to know what the dream's about. I tell them the dream facts and I let them roll with it as they will, because I'm not about to like put my lived experience on top of it. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, puppy chewing incident.
Oh, it's okay.
Is that where you fire dance? I know I put that. I have your long title somewhere in the description. It's just not showing it here, but I had to shorten it. So
it is where I fire dance. And this would be a great time to segue into how performance is a magical act. And the incredible power of performance as a magical practice. So many, many years ago, I met this very tall and handsome man who I'm now still married to. And he was going on about how he missed his old group of travelers at the festival. That's the characters they portrayed. And he wished he could have that back. And I said, if you miss it so much, start one. And so he's like, oh, I can do that. And I'm like, yeah. So we started, the two of us together, started a performance troupe. And in our second year with the troupe, we added fire to our act because we realized we could all do things that we all had performance skills we could set on fire. And the audience gives you more money when you scare them. So
that's true.
So I'm just going to be very frank that performance makes you really good at marketing and really shameless about getting those little crinkly dollars out of people's pockets. But you have to earn it. So we started Fondazi Fire. And after a number of years, we handed the management over to another couple in the troupe because we didn't want to be managers anymore. We just wanted to do the fire dancing. But we've been doing it. This is our 20th year dancing together. This is landmark incredible. The incredible thing about our performance troupe is we still have 4 founding members. And of those 4 founding members, 3 of us are women. And all 3 of us had a total of 7 babies during the time, over the course of these 20 years. None of us got fired or replaced for a younger, hotter woman. And guess what? We're still all hot. We're still amazingly talented. And if the entertainment industry would realize that if they just didn't replace women with the younger model all the time, we can do amazing things if you just let us have those tiny breaks for having babies, because some of us want them. Anyway, that's my little side soapbox.
Was fire training kind of klutzy at first and then evolved? Is it painful at times?
Oh, it's still painful, dude. Like, you always burn yourself. Fire is its own master,
Yes.
and we are just blessed to dance with it. So every year I get burned. You know, the wind. We're an outdoor performance stage, so the wind will change, the weather changes, all sorts of things happen. You catch something wrong. Honestly, the most injuries we have are from catching things wrong and grabbing the hot metal part instead of the middle of the prop. Or we have one piece where we jump through a wall of flame, and after the first season we realized that we should probably make the 6'2" men jump ahead of the 5'6" women, because the fire's bigger at the beginning. So we all lost a couple eyelashes that first time that we did it. But
who needs eyebrows?
that's what makeup's for.
There you go.
You can draw them on these days. But yeah, so, but the actual bringing it back to the magic of performance, and it took many years of lots of hard work to get to the caliber that we're at, but we reached this certain point, and then some of us started discussing putting actual magical intention purposefully into our performance. And being conscientious, because we'd always had this magical exchange with the audience, but there's one thing about background magic that just happens to every human being as they go through life, whether they realize it or not. It's always happening. And then there's putting intention into amplifying that. And what the 1 year that we had off during the pandemic made us realize that we were missing putting ourselves out there and taking the audience's emotions, because you get, 500-600 people in your audience. They're all coming with their own stories. They're all coming with their own emotions. You're delivering something to them. You're sweeping all their emotions back onto the stage with you, and you're transmuting them into something bigger and giving them back a gift. And that was a conscientious mindset that we went into after we lost that year, because we're like, all of us were suffering because we're like, we didn't get that fix that we usually get 7 weekends, 5 performances a day, doing this with the audience. And so when we finally were able to reconnect with the audience, it made us so much more intentional with the energetic magic that we're putting out for them. And because, everybody has to measure ROI, our tips went up an enormous amount after we started putting that intention out there. And it wasn't because we were putting the intention out there for money. We were putting the intention out there for building the spirit of our audience. And that was incredible. And the way that we felt at the end of the day was so much more powerful. And it was just, yeah. So performance is magic. A lot of performers do it. Like, we've been doing it for years without realizing what we were doing. But the second you start to actually put intention into it, it's so beautiful.
It's interesting too, because like Wham has had a very long interest in Eugenia Meis's story, right? And she was a performer, and she also had these ideas about psi potentiation being activated with certain conditions and certain chemical processes, one of which is fire. So it's like this extra added oomph to this transmutation that you're doing. Yeah, it's something that it sounds so intangible and evanescent, but at the same time, we've all been at various performances where it's just like transcendent and you just have this incredible high off of it. And then there's other ones where, just like everything is just falling flat and it's terrible.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's very obvious in the moment
Yep.
to human beings, but yeah, no, that's very a very interesting take on it. And again, I think that this is another avenue where you have just regular parts of human life, or something there's a lot more day to day, or that a lot more people are going to be involved with, that don't necessarily, or there's not.
You can say shit here.
It's,
Okay, so you're talking about like the day-to-day where people aren't putting so much ritual work into something, it's just happening. Is that where you're going?
Parts of life, you could look at it and see that it comes down to you could get esoteric knowledge and practice through these parts of a daily life where people would normally be looking more towards like something that reads more magical on the surface.
Right. Absolutely.
Whereas
I do that all the time with my job. If I didn't do that with my current job, I'd be like, it would bore me to tears. It's not actually the kind of job that I ever thought I would do. And it involves me. I mean, sometimes I'm really busy. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm like today, I wasn't that busy at all. I mean, I was mostly waiting for results to come back so that I could do stuff with them. But what that ended up is that I just was on the computer for literally almost 8 hours listening to podcasts while I was waiting for things to happen or doing my own things, you know. But what I've learned is that, how I do this is that when I am doing my job intensely, it involves a lot of interaction, kind of interesting social interactions with people, either in person or an email. And so I try to make every email kind of like an invocation. I put like an intention in every email and just kind of put it out there to like see what it does. To see what it does in its realm. And I've learned to kind of understand this all as play. Mm-hmm. Because none of what we're doing is really that important out there. But it's also you're gauging causes and effects. And now, of course, what I'm dealing with is we're beginning to deal with the processes of AI at my job. So, which I do since I see everything as consciousness, everything is a manifestation of consciousness. This is sort of a new form of consciousnesses that we are all kind of playing with, developing, giving birth to out of our own brains, out of our own, whatever it is we're doing. And yeah, it's dangerous, but it's only as dangerous as it's only as dangerous as if you're disrespectful to that process, then it's dangerous.
Yep. No, I my day job is a marketing writer for high-level B2B industry. Sounds very exciting, but I actually thoroughly enjoy it because I get to do different things every day and research really big topics and write about them. And we have some clients that work in like environmental spaces and stuff like that. So I get to do some stuff I feel very passionate about. But yeah, we of course are working on AI, and I was actually putting together a document this evening about incorporating that work into what we do. And I think that the way that I have been interacting with it is I pretend it's the ship's computer on Star Trek. And I'm like, computer, tell me about this. And then the computer always tells the people on the ship information. They have to act on it from there. They have to turn it into something that makes life better for the humans around them, And so I try to take that approach with it. I apologize if I set off my Alexa because I call it the name of the ship's device. I said the C word because Star Trek nerd. But I could hear it.
Star Trek nerd. Yay! Yay. I'm sorry, I'm Star Trek, not Star Wars.
I like them both.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like Star Wars too, but I'm really Star Trek. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's okay.
I went to a Star Trek convention for my 11th birthday, and it was like the greatest birthday I will ever have. So
Who'd you meet? Who'd you get to meet?
it was the first time ever that Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner had appeared at a convention together.
Ah!
So it was an unbeatable birthday. I will never have a birthday as good as that one. And then on the way home, my mom bought me a hamster. So like literally nothing will ever top that birthday.
Well, that's precious.
It was.
I have a good friend that I grew up with in like high school, junior high, Patty. Hi, Patty. She is a big Star Trek nerd as well. And I don't know, it was several years ago. It was her birthday, and she was working in a place that she was supervising a number of people. Anyway, they had like printed out a bunch of color Xerox printing images. So they made her entire office into like a reproduction of like the like the Starfleet, the command pilot room there, where Picard
The
sits
deck?
in there.
Yeah.
Yes, the deck. They surprised her, and they made some like cookies and stuff too. But she walked in, she was sending these pictures like, can you believe what they did? It was
I would have cried. That's amazing.
she was deeply touched. That was a pretty great one.
So this is a weird
tell her about yours. Yeah.
Weird segue, but I don't know how much time we have on here.
No,
But,
we've got another 50 minutes.
okay,
Yeah,
I wasn't
we
sure.
need-
I didn't want to run out of
yeah.
time before we talked about sex.
Oh,
Because we did promise
got
you we would talk
five
about
till-
sex.
She doesn't want it to be a quickie.
Five till.
that's sex.
No, we don't want it to be a
One of Jeffrey's favorite topics.
Yeah. One time we heard a weird porno go off during the show, and we don't know where it came from. It wasn't me. It was like the sound effects, and no one knew where it came from.
What was it? Like, what? You remind me.
Like, oh, I don't know. It's something like that.
You had
But
a
one time
sexy
a drum-
EVP.
One time a drum went off. Like, we have weird things. Like during the McGregors, Trish and Rob McGregor, like a drum went off.
All right.
Did that come from you? I'm like interrogating people, trying to figure out where the shit's coming from.
We all have to channel that we're going to get an EVP of the When Harry Met Sally moment during this show. Then.
Doesn't Wham hate Q?
I'm sorry, what?
Don't you hate Q? And there's someone I know that.
Oh, I do hate Q. I mean,
Oh.
of all the Star Trek things, I mean, I know that that's blasphemy to hate Q, but I do. I
like
mean,
Q.
I hate Q.
My
He's a guy-
partner
he's a
hates
good
him
actor.
too.
He's a
I
good
mean,
actor.
whenever there is a Q episode, I skip it. Just like,
Oh.
I mean, I will watch it once, and then I'll skip it after that. I just. And the fact that in Picard, it's Star Trek, the Picard thing that just ended, the fact that like all of season 2 was like had Q as the conceit, pissed me off. It's like, oh, that's just an excuse to do something different with the Borg. Shut up! I hated it. I hated it. It was it's stupid. It's just stupid. Because you don't need that to have temporal shifts.
I got a question about Star Trek. A friend told me that Stranger Worlds was the best one since the original
it's great.
series.
Strange Worlds.
It is amazing.
I started Discovery, but I'm
Stranger
behind. I watched the
Strange
first
World.
season of Picard. I need to watch the rest of Picard.
But yeah, Strange Worlds has the most like authentic through line from the original series through Next Generation vibe that I've seen out of any of the Star Treks. I am also a huge Deep Space Nine fan just because I like all the things that happen. It's so meaty. But
But it is a different Trek vibe.
it is a different animal. But they gave us Worf again, so we felt safe.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I mean, and actually, I liked all the spiritual stuff in it.
Yeah, I totally love that.
I liked how dark it got and how it really dealt finally with the real issues of race and politics and all that kind of stuff. I thought that all of that was really, really well done. But Strange New Worlds, it has the best of the old vibe but it's updated massively.
Right.
You know,
It's
and it's
so good.
it's very good. The first season, I was like, it's over. Oh my God, it's over.
Yep.
You
It's
know,
coming back soon. It's coming back soon, you know. The
Yeah.
second season. I had a friend tell me about a show that you might want to check out. It's on Amazon, and from what I gather of it, it's one of those. It's kind of confusing, but I don't want to give too much of it away. It's called The Devil's Hour, and it's basically British. And there's a lady, and there's like, it's kind of at first kind of like a lady has kind of like psychic situations, and then kind of like a Hannibal Lecter type situation where she's visiting the guy in the jail. But it turns out you're trying to decide if this guy's really abducting kids and killing people, but it turns out to him he's saving people's lives through time travel and multiple timelines. So you're trying to figure out, is this guy freaking nuts? Is he really like a killer? Like, it's really good. Peter Capaldi, which I don't know, I've heard of him, but I haven't seen him in anything else. But I've definitely heard of him.
Yeah.
But they're supposed to be doing 2 more seasons of it. I have to watch one point, but that's what I gather of it.
Yeah.
But definitely worth checking out.
I will definitely check that one out.
And 333 is a prominent thing in it. Like, she
Well,
wakes
it's
up
because
at
this woman keeps waking up between 3 and 4 every morning. And the average is like 3:33, which is always weird because like like if I go to bed, because I have to go to bed really early to get up at 5. So if I go to bed at 9, which is what I try to do, I always wake up promptly at 12:50, and then I go back to sleep, and then I wake up right after 3. And then I go back to sleep until 5. It's so weird. It's like, what is that about? I mean, I know it has something to do with me needing to pee, but it's all.
I was born at 3:14 in the morning, and then I watched Amityville Horror, and I was like, that's way too close. Like when I was much younger, and then I got over that fear. But no, for a long time, I would wake up at 3:15, 3:14 every morning, and I think that sometimes your body's just like, cool, this is our new habit. We're gonna keep this.
Well, there's that book that in the research that came out a while back about the second sleep.
Yes,
the second sleep.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of that whole, like, cycling in and out. And my partner does not have insomnia, so he doesn't understand my life at all. And I'm like, sometimes I wake up and I'm up for a few hours and I'm okay. Because I'm awake does not mean there's a problem, but he'll be like, are you all right? And I'm like, yes. Go back to sleep. Enjoy your weird life where you sleep through the night.
Yeah, sleep cycles are wild. It's like my mom. She has been an insomniac ever since I've known her. She's in her early 80s now, and she still has this because especially she's growing up in the 40s and 50s, and there's this whole idea about sleep hygiene that was very current for me. And I'm always trying to tell her, Mom, she's like, thinks, well, there must be something wrong. It's like, Mom, you've always had problems sleeping. You've always had insomnia. I think that's just kind of how you are.
Right.
So, but it's difficult to manage sometimes, with the way society's set up, unfortunately. So,
well, yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
I have a very cool sleepy story from my old house that we lived in. So the place that we lived previously, the family that had owned it before us lived there for 60 years. They had 10 children in a 3 or 4 bedroom house. There was a lot of babies in this house. Sadly, one of the children had a heart condition and passed away at age 9. And then at some point over those 60 years in the 70s, the house was kind of like on a hill right before the park and the ball field area. And a bunch of the neighborhood kids were playing, and a toddler was with the neighborhood kids and was struck and killed by a car coming up the hill at the blind spot. So, of course, when we moved into the house, that was one of the first things my neighbors told me. And I was like, and I was super protective of my kids being near the street. But at night, sometimes because my son was 2 when we moved in, and so he would oftentimes boom, 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 boom down the hallway and come into my room to sleep. And so, like, I started teaching him, make a nest next to my side of the bed and go to sleep there. Bring your blanket and pillow. You can sleep there, just, whatever. And then sometimes I would hear pat, 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 pat come down the hall. And because I was a light sleeper, and this has just been, I've always been a light sleeper, and it worked out great for parenthood, but I would wake up and I'd be like, okay, well, he's going to come in the room, and I don't want to be scared when he comes in the room. So I'm going to like stare at the door, and I'd stare at the door, and there'd be no kid. And then all of a sudden the foot of the bed would press down, and I would feel somebody sitting at the foot of the bed. And this was when we had an elderly dog who could not walk up the stairs. And then I'd be like, okay, I'm going back to sleep now. And and it was weird because, like, I was never scared. I'd just be like, well, that's not my child, and they can stay there. And I'd go right back to sleep. So I'm not sure what was happening in my old house, but we would get footsteps that we could hear from downstairs when the kids were both asleep. And at night when we were upstairs in our bed, we'd hear the same footsteps and then get that weight at the bed.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're good, kid, whoever you are.
That's so wild because I'm just talking about, my mom
Yeah.
and I have actually wrote this up on my blog a while back called Haunting My Mom. That's the spoiler.
Yeah.
So my mom, this is over 6 years ago, she used to live downtown here in this old house, and that had only been lived in by one old lady who left. The house next door was, so mom's house is like an arts and crafts kind of built in the 20s, but it was in a block of Victorians that were built like in the 1870s, 1880s. And the house next to hers, a lady had been living there, and her daughter and son-in-law for quite a while. And that one was very haunted. I mean, like people that all of a sudden a wind comes through and all the windows and doors blow open or blow shut, or, that type of thing, feeling like you're trying to get pushed downstairs.
Yeah.
That type of pretty intense physical stuff had been going on for like 20 or so years, but mom had never experienced anything at all in her house. And she lived there for over 10 years. So she ended up getting a really severe back fracture due to osteoporosis at the same time she was selling her house. So I came up and I just started staying with her because she was in bad shape, trying to get that diagnosed and fixed and her moved and buy a new house, blah, blah, blah. So during the last couple of months that she was in that 1920s house with wood floors and everything, I was sleeping on the couch in the front room, and she was sleeping in the back, and she started to tell me, she's like, I never had anything weird happen in this house, but recently I'll be awake at night and I'll hear footsteps come from like the front of the house in the hall, like right outside the door, like they're listening, and then they'll go back up. And it's like a woman, I think it's the woman who used to live here. It's like she's coming and she's just checking on me to make sure that I'm okay. And I'm like, and this happened repeatedly, and this whole time I'm thinking, well, I almost dropped an F-bomb. I was thinking, well, heck, finally someone in my family has like a big old haunting, and I'm not hearing any of it. Right. So time moves on, we move in here, blah, blah, blah. She got that thing fixed, and for a while she was on, she had a lot of pain because of all this, because it had been very bad and had gone on for a couple of months before they diagnosed it and were able to fix it. So it took her a while to come back from it. And then she also had some other surgeries. So she was on, like a lot of weed and a little bit of opioids.
Right.
But she'd spent a lot of kind of hypnopompic time. And what she noticed was, she was telling me one time, she's like, I'll be kind of like in a reverie or half asleep, half awake. And I'll be talking to you and you're talking to me. And we're having this nice conversation. And then I'll try and hand you something or whatever. And then I'll wake up and it's not there. And she was telling me this. And then I was like, oh, like I'm checking on you, right?
Yep.
And I think that those footsteps were me worrying about my mom. And that's, of course, why I never heard it, because it was happening when I was asleep.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, that's good.
But it's interesting to me how much because Dion Fortune talks about this in Psychic Self-Defense, and my own teacher, Leslie Temple Thurston, talks about the same process, which is people think that a haunting has to be scary, but a lot of the times, like you can have a certain like a extrusion of part of your own vital essence and consciousness. She says, guardian angels of small children can happen this way when mothers unfortunately die when their children are still small, still growing. But also, I think this can happen with living people and I've done this consciously for people that I'm friends with or working with spiritually or my family, to say, I've set aside a part of me for you, as kind of like if you need me at any time or whatever, and if you can't like get in contact with me consciously, or you don't feel like you want to or whatever, you can access that's like there for you. And it's people have found that to be helpful at different times. But so I think it's interesting. People think it's like usually it's like you're like making a deal with the devil for some nefarious purpose, and it's created this like the Amityville, right? Something, all this kind of fraught stuff. But I think a lot of this stuff happens in these more kind of loving or supportive contexts, or Theresa, like with you, where, you have possibly, a child that, who knows how they've resolved what happened to them. But they understand that there's a place that they can come and get comfort and rest and feel safety. And so I think, to me, that's a lot of what is not like my driving force behind interest in these topics, is not just to get people less freaked out, but, you can actually, help other entities, feel, safe and comforted and that support them in their own development. So
I actually had, like, your story about haunting your mom and everything. I had a very, very intensely vivid lucid dream experience where I was lucid in my dream, and then I popped very awake in my dream state into my childhood bedroom. And in that dream, like, things happened in that dream, but then in the moment in that dream, while I was in my childhood bedroom, all of a sudden my lucid self was aware of what was happening, went, oh my God, what if I'm the reason my sister was afraid of the dark? What if I am currently time traveling right now back to our childhood and scaring the living daylights out of her? And it's because I did this right now that she's grown up so afraid of the dark.
So you need to introduce us to your person there.
My little person who ran away, that is Tucker. Tucker is featured a lot on my Twitter feed at Firebee Unicorn. He is my little baby. He is my third child because we could not conceive a third child. And I gave my partner extreme blessing that if he ever wanted to buy me a puppy, he was allowed to. And then one day he did it.
Oh.
So that is Tucker.
I just saw his chin come up. So
yeah. He knows that during the daytime when I have Zoom meetings for work, that he's welcome to all the work meetings. Actually, he's mandatory for the work meetings. And so if I'm sitting here, he's like, hey, I get to be on camera. Takes after me.
We were going to talk about sex.
Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about how important it is that people be comfortable with other people being comfortable with sex. Because that's really all I'm asking, is that other people be comfortable with other people being comfortable with sex.
Exactly. There was one thing that came up, what I was thinking of when we were talking about dreams and stuff. When these beings show up when you're sleeping and things like that. We had Wally Wagner on last week about UFOs in the Bible, and I said he was a preacher that went rogue because he was complaining about, how much they shun the UFO topic in Christianity and at churches and stuff. But anyway, Michael Carter, who's Ancient Aliens, African American guy that's well known in the scene, he was sleeping, and he had a wounded leg that was swollen really bad. And he woke up in the middle of the night, and there was like a glowing, shining monk-like figure and he saw it, and he curled up in a ball and tried to wake his wife up, but she wouldn't wake up, and he was scared, and it went away, I guess. And then he woke up the next day, and the leg was healed, and that was one of the things that got him into all of this. And me, I've had experiences where I've seen weird glowing beings. I've seen two leave a house and fly into the heavens like they were in the house and came out the roof and went into the heavens completely sober, not even nicotine. And it's just strange how they visit you in your sleep, and it makes you wonder if if we're these energy beings as well. And when we sleep, is there like a quantum realm that we go to, the same realm that you probably go to when you die? And from what I've seen of the light beings and seeing those kind of things, I know shamans, we've had a lot of those on, from Serge Kahali King, Hawaiian, Huna guy, to a bunch of different people. But they talk about luminous beings. So, and of course, my biggest go-to is Ron Howard's Cocoon. Opie did some shrooms. Steve Gutenberg, they all got high, made Cocoon 1 and 2. But the body is the cocoon to me. It's like a metaphor. So, and what's so weird about those movies, you can barely find them. You have to pay like something crappy on eBay just to get those on DVD, which they're not even on Blu-ray, and they're not on streaming. Might find them on R type ways, but other than that, it's just interesting when you're sleeping how these things come up and things like that. And Christina here, my fiance, she woke up and saw a weird insectoid type kind of being standing over the bed with me one night. And there's been times where before the show, I tried to go outside and let the sun, white light, kind of meditate to that. And there was one time when I went to a house and saw one standing over a lady that was passing away who was older, that Christina was taking care of. And it saw me and looked. So it's just interesting, all these things that are happening on an astral level. And when we're sleeping, we're going to that Matrix 2, I guess, on some level, and leaving the body and regenerating or whatever. And to me, it's kind of like a big Sims game up there, from what I've seen. It's like that down here, but weirder and more painful and horrific. But
Jeffrey, I saw a. This isn't a very good segue, but I just, because you're talking about all these light beings, and I actually a few months ago, there is an ancient. It's not ancient. It's like a historical cemetery, but it's still in use up the road here in Yountville, and I don't know. It's a really pretty spot. I like it a lot, and it has graves going back to like the 1820s, 1830s, and up to the present day. And it's in the town of Yountville, which is named after this guy George C. Yount, who was a white guy who came here. He was a big Freemason, and his grave has this obelisk that has these kind of. One of the sides has a bas-relief carving of this kind of enigmatic, it's like a scene from Freemasonry. And it's like a young girl, and I forget exactly what's happening, but like Father Time is behind her, and he's like either doing or undoing her braids. It's very kind of enigmatic, and it was very controversial, this tableau, because it's supposed to be like secret to the Masons and not supposed to be shown. There is, in the town of Mendocino, there's a carving of the same tableau on top of, it used to, I think now it's a bank. It's this huge three-dimensional sculpture of redwood that this guy, was like a single guy and was a Mason and did this carving and then died mysteriously or something. It's like this very strange thing. And Yount, speaking of dreams and the influence of dreams, was instrumental in, actually, this has a little Hannibal over crossover too, because he was here in Northern California in Napa when the Donner Party was trapped in the Sierras, and he had a dream that they. I don't know if it was kind of precognitive or like a telepathy dream, but he had this dream that gave him this very strong impetus to feel that they were still had survivors and they could be saved. And so he worked very hard to send people to to rescue them, and they were rescued. And a young woman who was with the party was rescued, and she came here to Napa and founded the first school for children here in the valley. Anyway, so it's this. His grave is here with all this history in Yountville. And I was there about, I don't know, probably about maybe 3.5 months ago. And I very rarely see anything. Usually my impressions are more just kind of like knowing something or feeling something in the body, maybe hearing something. But I was in this graveyard or cemetery, and I actually saw like an apparition for like maybe about 2.5, 3 seconds, just kind of like walking. And it was a weird thing because you might say, well, it's like a shadow being, but it wasn't like a shadow. It felt like if there was like an electromagnetic field in the shape of a person that drew a bunch of soot to it. And it kind of managed to have this kind of like coherence. It like was like
shimmering.
Yeah, except for it was kind of drawing light in instead of reflecting it out. It was a very weird experience, and it was strange too because I hear from a lot of people who are like, well, going to a cemetery, that's not going to be a very good place to see an apparition because blah blah blah, which is all very true except for it happened.
There's been times I've seen a giant being of light walk through the sky, and on the beach in the ocean here. I was probably on something, but yeah, other people saw it too. And usually when I am and the other person is too, I make sure they're seeing it too, and they do. And they forget it 10 years later, but
yeah.
That is quite honestly like my only thing that I ask the phenomenon is like, if I see something, I need somebody else to be there, because if it's just me, I'm going to go get an MRI because that'll freak me out.
Well, that's funny because I had this flare up recently of the lupus, which seems to be affecting my neurological psychiatric situation, which it's known to do. Complicated by the fact that I guess a lot of some of the medicines they use to treat it can also cause that as a problem. So anyway, but the weird thing was for me that it's like 3 weeks ago or something, within like a couple of hours, I was suddenly having a really bad aphasia, like, gibberish, talking. I couldn't read. I couldn't understand the spoken word. And I was hallucinating at the same time. But the weird thing is that, because Theresa, you're talking about like, when I saw that being in Yountville, it's kind of like, okay, this is just like some weird psi thing happening. And I have a lot of psychic impressions, that type of stuff. And it was interesting to me that it was like very distinct. It's like, okay, yeah, this is like the brain going wonky all of a sudden. And I've had a lot of hallucinations in the past because I've had to use like prednisone in very high doses.
Yep.
Which and for me, especially when you're coming down off that, it's not unusual for people to have hallucinations.
I had weird dreams. I had to be on prednisone just about a month ago because I got a bout of poison ivy really bad.
Oh no.
And it wasn't getting better, so they put me on prednisone, and I just had physical issues when they first put me on it. But when I was coming off of it, I had the first nightmare I have had in years. And I woke up and I knew that it was the drug. I knew that it wasn't, didn't mean anything. It was just neural garbage from the drugs. Prednisone's terrible that way.
It can really, it's literally saved my life more than once. But yeah, it is really hard on the system in a number of ways. It's not a free ride. But I think it gets back to, you're talking about like little bits and keeping up with some kind of daily practice or at whatever
Mhm.
level, can be good, because then you're a lot more familiar with your own body mind system. So when something happens, you're going to have a better, if you're kind of tuning in and allowing a little bit of psi stuff to come in or whatever,
Yeah.
you're going to be more in tune with, okay, is this like a psychic thing, or is it just something in the instrument, as some people refer to the body, going
I
wonky? Yeah.
I have a question for Lamb, because
Mhm.
I have not had much chance to talk to other people at ease about these sorts of things, but it sounds like you are also a pretty strong lucid dreamer and
Mhm.
experience with dreams. I don't have nightmares very often either, and I think that honestly my lucid dreaming abilities started when I was much younger, and I was like, this is scary, I don't want this to happen, how can I change this? And I was able to like start changing my dreams at a young age, and that's what did it. And so it's just so fascinating to hear from somebody else who doesn't have frequent nightmares, and they stand out in a significant way, because
I
I
used to. I used
yeah,
to when I was
yeah.
when I was growing up. When I was I mean, I had a fairly traumatic childhood in a number of different ways,
Mhm.
and um, so I have. But although I can remember distinctly my first nightmare, I mean, the
Oh.
first nightmare that I remember having, um, and um, and it came, retrospectively, it came at a kind of a significant time
Mhm.
in my life when I was young, and I had. I'm sure that when I was growing up, I probably had a diagnosable sleep disorder, but I didn't tell anybody about it. But
Mhm.
I had really I had really bad nightmares, and I also had night terrors. I had
Yeah.
both of those, and but as I got older, especially as I got more into certain types of spiritual practices, dream work, and started integrating that trauma,
Mhm.
maybe about 20 years ago. Um, Over time, the nightmares just went away. And so I just really don't have them anymore.
Mhm.
I don't even, and it's rare that I even wake up. I used to wake up and be afraid, of stuff in the house.
Yeah.
Um, but now the only time I wake up, if I experience, I've had some weird experiences. I mean, I don't. Both Stephanie and Jeffrey know that I don't really see stuff that much.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a person who sees beings that much. Um, but I hear things a lot, both internal sounds and external sounds. That's sort of
Mhm.
one of the ways in which I kind of pick up stuff. And so I've had experiences where, um, well, one of my favorite ones that happened where I live, and I hadn't lived here too long, and I was connecting with Naga energy. I have like a Naga practice as part of my spiritual practice, and and I had just started it, and I had just done sort of like my first puja, my first, offering stuff. And it was like maybe 2 or 3 nights later. And it was in the summertime. I had just moved my bedroom. I'm in my office now. I just moved my bedroom next door. My bedroom used to be in here. And
Okay.
I just moved it to the other room. And I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard something in my office, and I woke up, and I remember I sat up, and I distinctly, I mean, I heard this. It's like it was audio. I heard some things. I knew I had, how you can feel presence. I
Right.
knew that there was more than one thing in my office, and I distinctly heard something say to something else, "This is where she lives." and I said, and because my response to the universe is that if I'm sleeping, if I'm trying to rest, you don't bug me. That is like I'm kind of absolute about that.
Yeah.
And as soon as I heard that, I audibly said, I said, "Get out." like that. And it left, you know. You know, and more recently, this happened about a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago. I was attempting to help a friend of mine at the time deal with a kind of a weird haunting situation that they had at their house. And it was one of those situations where I knew that there was a limited amount that I could do because the two people who lived there were actually kind of attached to the haunted. They were attached to the identity of being haunted. You know, so even though they didn't like it and wanted somebody to do something about it, they were also like, their whole fear thing was like, I'm afraid, but then they'd obsess about it. You know what I mean? It was like they wanted it around as kind of a
dopamine fix.
Right, and it's kind of a vindication of their victim status, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, so I was doing a few things, and you know, I actually made contact with whatever it was, and I kind of had a sense of what it was. But at one point, because of that, it decided to come home. A part of it decided to come home with me and try to mess with me. And I just was like, I woke up and it was like right here, and it was trying to talk, and I literally went like this, took my hand and went. It just like slammed it into the wall. And it left, and it's never come back. I just went bam, and I went right back to sleep. It's like I went right back to sleep. I was like, oh, shut up, you know. And so I don't know. I mean, I just when I have those experiences, I'm very pragmatic about them, and I don't get afraid like I used to. I have a very distinct set of practices that I do, and actually, they're Sufi practices. You know, they're very simple. It's kind of like the way that you exorcise a demon is to remind it that it's part of something larger, and that it's
I like that.
My mom's had weird experiences in a dreamlike state, and I guess right when she wakes up early, was seeing naked men in the house.
Oh, we're back to sex. Okay.
One had a big schlong, and she called him Thor, so it looked like the Thor guy. There's been other weird ones like that.
You know, if I wake up and see a naked man in my house, it's not my partner. The first thing I'm thinking is I have to get this bleepity bleep out of my house, not worrying if it's a spirit entity. But we do have 15 minutes left to talk about sex, and we keep not talking about sex.
About some Bigfoot.
You keep no. That is not the point of what the conversation is.
Stephanie always has Bigfoot porn stories.
I was just thinking with your mom, it's interesting because, you know, we had Dr. Megan Rose on we were talking to, who talks about spirit marriage. And one of the people
was a hoot nanny.
one of the people that she profiles in her book had like a Odin was courting her. And I mean, I don't want to say it's not the most subtle thing, but if you have this like naked guy showing up in front of you with his attributes on display, let's say, I mean, it's trying to get across like a certain idea about what the kind of relationship they might enjoy having with you, or possibility they might. But so it's interesting that this is happening to your mom, because with a number of people who end up pursuing or falling into these like kind of spirit marriages with various deities or discarnate entities or whatever, this is kind of like this can be, let's say, an opening salvo or invitation to the dance. I mean, it's not like the world's most subtle thing, but
it's kind of like a dick pic from the
a ghost streaker.
Ladies,
see an alternate
I'm on a Facebook group called I'm in a Facebook group called I'm a Rando, and these are on Tinder, and these are my demands. And it's so what it basically is, I mean, is in posting the most obnoxious profiles that they've found from all these dating apps, or the most obnoxious changes with mostly with guys and a few girls, that they've had, that various of the the posters have had, but it. But of course, there's the legendary dick pic, that.
Well, this is part of the thing that gets me about, like, when people talk about sex magic, because they always think that it has to, do with like, two people,
or more.
Yeah, the whole ritual and inside the pentagram and like the candles, the act is occurring. But the thing that gets me is people miss exactly what you're talking about, which is like, okay, you have to convince someone to try and pursue these activities with you. So you might want to like, how can you end up like not coming across as like some creep? Showing people a good time, even in like the preliminaries, just being like, chat people up, come across as like, someone attractive looking, doing something amazing like fire dancing or something where people might say, hey, maybe
just be a human being and not a walking genital.
Right.
I mean,
there you go. Yeah.
That to me is sexy. It's like, don't, without conversation, I honestly don't care.
Right.
That is so fundamental, and it kills me too, because I have like this reputation of being the sex person, and I get people that tell me like really personal, intimate, beautiful, incredible experiences and stuff. But I also get a lot of people in my DMs that are just, hey, I saw this picture, it reminded me of you because, something specific that I've shown an interest in, or I thought you might be interested in this article, or this funny thing happened today. It's just, a lot of, I wanted to send you, well, like AP Strange, he's so cute. He will send me like a picture of his wife, and she's just like with her glasses on, no makeup, in her pajamas with the dog. He's like, isn't she the most beautiful person in the world? But it's just like a human, regular, I saw I was eating these pancakes or something, just like figure out how to communicate with people about ideas or things that are fun. And I think a lot of people miss that aspect of, the erotic or, connection to other people.
Oh, absolutely. And, I've delved into reading about some of the, traditional sex magic literature out there. And as somebody who, by absolute choice, has been monogamous with the same person for 20 years, we've had some pretty good sex in those 20 years, and some pretty magical stuff has happened. And, there's so much to be gained. And it's not like, I'm not like up here soapboxing monogamy by any stretch. I'm soapboxing connecting with a person in a way that is mutually beneficial for that connection, finding the place where that person wants, like, because some people do want to have those completely random hookup experiences. That's where they get their fix. And more power to that situation. I was there in my early 20s, and it was great. And those things, heaven help me if that should ever happen again. Maybe it would be the thing that moves me. But, the finding where the other person that you're trying to connect with, where they're at, and then meeting them there is a big part of that initial, working of the foundation of where you're going to build your magic from. But the part where I feel like a lot of the ritual stuff that at least I've read about, heard about over the years, starts to fall apart is the performance and the act does not, it is typically from such a male hetero perspective,
Phallocentric,
that there is and the amount of effort that all these women that they are talking about have put into choreographing is not easy, and performing is not easy. And in addition to being a fire dancer, I have done some burlesque. I'm hoping to do more once I can get back out in the world here. But, performing in a way that is sexual is an incredibly empowering experience. And all these texts about sex magic don't give the woman her due at all because she's just a tool. But fuck,
Yeah.
I always said it. I said the word that I was not supposed to say. But I said it in the moment that it was the most sincere statement I could make. Forget that.
Completely appropriate, yeah.
We had an author on about sex shamanism. I have the book somewhere, but I'm forgetting her name right now. But the book's right there.
But yeah, I mean, even when it comes to, and this is something that you had mentioned at the beginning, Stephanie, talking about the tee-hee moments that happen sometimes in the para-weird. I know that for myself, I will occasionally put very sexually charged content out there under a you have to opt in to see this shield, because I want people to be consensual when they meet me at that space. But then people will from there start to like do parodies of that, like, oh, here's my shoe, that's a sexual thing. And it's like, you know, if people like could not diminish what other people's power is by turning everything into a joke. And I think that if somebody's creating something in their space and then people are turning it into a joke because that's the only place they can be comfortable with it is, that's one of the frustrating like give and take things that I've encountered as a more sex forward being in the para-weird space.
I think that Jeff, you know, you're very open about sex too, and I think, I mean, sex can be funny, but it can also be because like Theresa, you posted some great like self-portraits you've done of yourself, like in nude in the forest, and they're really, I don't know, it's like really erotic, but it's like a very different. I don't want to say, it's more like a self-possessed erotic experience of a woman, a person alive in this incredible natural place, right? And feeling this alive electricity in the body, in the presence of all these other beings. And, you know, so it's very different from, you're my bodacious tatas, you know? Yeah. So I think a lot of people don't know how to react because they
did you say bodacious tatas?
Oh yes, I did.
We have like 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes to talk about tatas. I know.
I was thinking about the porn Edward Penis Hands. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but look it up. Your life will never be the same.
Oh, I'm sure.
Edward Penis Hands. He literally has penises for hands.
That's part of the thing. Is that I don't want to say, like Theresa, what I like about your art about this is it's not performative, it's not formulaic, but it's like almost like it was penis. It's like the whole idea of what this creative idea gone wild of what the boundaries are dissolving. What if you could have like an erotic relationship with the entire forest? Like, what would that be like, right?
Oh, exactly.
I think a lot of people, they don't have that rich of an erotic life, and so it sets them back on their heels. They're not sure how to react to it. And I think, like you say, I mean, it may not be for you. Don't be naughty about it.
Well, a lot of people, honestly, I think are just really. I mean, you know, like I'm a member of FetLife, and I can say that here. I don't care, and you know, I live in a polyamorous relationship, so I'm on other dating apps, you know, and when I encounter a lot of other people, you know, they're on these things. And they can even be, you know, on FetLife and be like, you know, think of themselves as kinky or whatever it is they think of themselves. But when you actually get down to talking to them, they're pretty average, you know. They're not really that interesting in a lot of ways, you know. I mean, other than like where they put their genitals, you know. And I mean, it's they're you know, most people are just kind of plain Janes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sorry.
No, I love it.
We're at the end. I have to end it.
That's a perfect
What an
ending.
ending.
We're at the end.
But Theresa,
Plain Jane.
give
Plain
us
Jane
some links.
King.
Any websites you want to give out?
WeirdoCollective.com, and you can find us on Twitter at Weirdo Collect, and my personal account is at FireBeeUnicorn for Fire Breathing Unicorn.
Alrighty, well, we appreciate it so much. It's been a great
Thank
show.
you,
Thank
Theresa.
you, Teresa. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Wham.
Wham.
Thank you,
Thank you
Jeffrey.
all.
Thank you,
I have to
audience.
prepare for these ladies to come tomorrow to trim the pig's hoofs.
Oh,
Elvira,
Is that a
the-
euphemism?
Yeah, they have to flip her on her back
It's an actual thing.
and
It's an
sand
actual thing.
hoofs.
This is not
I
a
have to be
skill.
ready. There's a pig in here. Her name's Elvira, after Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and I have
Aw.
to. She's huge, and she never stops wanting to eat forever. And screams and says, "Mama." But everybody have a good weekend. Thank you, Robert Sullivan. Next week, I don't know, like Freemason, Illuminati stuff, and horror movies and weird stuff like that, cinema and stuff like that. Stanley Kubrick, and I'm sure horror movies with weird symbolism. But everybody have a good weekend. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.